nutrients and energy, soil and minerals plays a very important role in that. So that is why they comes into the abiotic factor. Next is the biotic. Biotic factors include which are living organism and can directly involved in and are directly involved in a flow of energy. First is producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers are the one which can produce their own food, that is via photosynthesis. In aquatic ecosystem, it's for phytoplanktons, and in terrestrial ecosystem, they are the plants. Consumers are those who depend on the plants directly to have their energy, and decomposers are those which are at the last unit of recycling of the nutrients, because they just decompose the dead and decaying matter again into nutrients and transfer it into the soil. Next is abiotic factors. As I told first, that abiotic factors consist of non-living chemical and physical components like water, air, nutrients. The physical and the chemical factors that influence living organism in ecosystem and aquatic life zones. So abiotic components are mainly of two types: climatic factors and edaphic factors, which I've already explained. Next is biotic. Biotic, as I told about producers, they are the self feeders also, and I told that in aquatic there are phytoplanktons, and in terrestrial there are plants. Next is consumers. Consumers are also known as heterotrophs because they are not able to prepare their own food, and they have to depend on the plants or on the phytoplanktons, or we can say the seafood, to obtain their energy. Consumers are subdivided into primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary, quaternary, and omnivores. If I talk about primary consumers are also known to be as herbivores because they are directly dependent on the plants, whereas secondary consumers are the ones which eat animals, or they can even consume the plant. There is nothing like because there is the intermixing of everything, so we can't place them in a perfect trophic level, but we place primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary in a trophic level when we talk about food chain, not food web. Next is component of ecosystem. Third is decomposers. As I told, they are the they play a very important role in recycling of the nutrients, as because of them again the nutrient cycle is continued and they get back into the soil, and from there it is taken by the plants for making food again. Next is hydrological cycle. From the word hydrological cycle, we came to know that it is regarding water. Since water is also recycled in our ecosystem, we have the precipitation. First of all, there is evaporation from the oceans or the surface of the ocean surface of the water. Then it goes to make the clouds. There the condensation of the water molecules occurs, and finally the precipitation occurs, which again the Next is carbon cycle. Carbon cycle is very very important in our ecosystem because carbon dioxide is present in a good quantity in our ecology. So if I talk about carbon cycle, it's not the truth that only plants have a major function in recycling the carbon or having the carbon cycle continuing, but the major carbon dioxide is fixed in the earth via algae. Algae play a major role in fixing the carbon because they almost recycle 50% of the earth's carbon. So carbon cycle is important because first of all it is required by the plants for photosynthesis. Second, we cannot consume carbon dioxide in us because we don't have because if we do so we'll not have the oxyhemoglobin, and if there's no oxyhemoglobin it will result into choking and finally into the death. So carbon is not good for our health in an excess quantity, but yeah, we need to recycle it so that the earth atmosphere keeps on going and photosynthesis goes on going and we get the food. Next are ecological pyramids. As I told you first, that we can't keep the things definite into ecological pyramids because there is intermixing of every trophic level in the food web. But when we talk about food chain, we can keep the organisms in complete ecological pyramids. So this is the graphical representation of an ecological pyramid. So there are different types of ecological pyramids, that is ecological pyramid of numbers, biomass, energy. So I'll be discussing it further. So first of all, it is pyramid of numbers. When I talk about pyramid of numbers, it is directly related to the numbers. That is how much number is consumed or how much numbers of that organism is present in that level. First of all, you can see the base over there. There is written 10,000 freshwater shrimps. You can even talk about that number of plants. Of course, the number of plants or the number of fruits are much more than the number of herbivores and the and the consumers. So we keep it at the base, and further it moves on as the numbers decreases in the consumers. Next is pyramid of energy. Pyramid of energy is directly made by Lindeman's law, where he told that only 10% of the energy is moved further in the next trophic level, and rest is lost as a rest is lost, maybe the heat production or other in the biological processes. So this is only 10% of energy is transferred to the next trophic level. So here you can see that if there is this much of sunlight, only 1%, that is called PAR, that is consumed by the plants, and then 10% law follows on, that is also known as the Lindeman's law, the 10% law of energy. So this is the pyramid of energy. Pyramid of biomass. Biomass means the dry matter of an organism that is transferred to the next trophic level. If I talk about the plants, there are a number of plants. You can see there is corn, and then there is pig, and then there is a human. Because humans are omnivorous, we depend on plants and animals both for our food and energy. So this shows the pyramid of biomass. It is inverted when we talk about aquatic ecosystem, because in aquatic ecosystem, the big fishes or the small fishes depends on the phytoplanktons, and phytoplanktons are very small in biomass. So it is inverted pyramid in only aquatic system. Next is trophic structure or trophic cycle. As I told you that everyone plays an important role in recycling of nutrients and ecology. So there are producers, consumers, and decomposer. They have their own roles, which makes a cycle of everything, and everything is recycled and come back to its origin from where it was taken on. Next, there is a difference between food chain and food web. Food chain is actually not present in reality, but just to simplify our understanding, we make it into food chain and food web. Food chain is just the linear way of representing of how the energy is passed on and how the biomass is passed on to the successive trophic levels. A food chain is sequence of who eats whom in biological community. That is the actual definition of food chain. If I talk about food web is the intermixing of all the food chains, because if a human is kept as secondary consumer in a food chain, it may be in tertiary consumers in another food chain. So this is all the intermixing of different food chains, and it makes a food web. So that food web is very important, so that if one organism or one trophic level gets extinct, there is not the extinction of all the animals that are present in that food chain. So that is why food web is very important. Otherwise, if one will extinct, whole food chain will disrupted, and every organism will get extinct by the next time. Next is forest ecosystem. As I've not mentioned over here, that ecological succession. So I'll be telling you about ecological succession. Ecological succession is that from the extreme conditions to the mesic conditions. First is forest ecosystem. Forest ecosystem starts from two things. It can be primary succession, it can be secondary succession. Primary succession deals with from a bare area to the mesic conditions, and secondary succession where the life existed in one time, but it has been burnt, or you can say slash or burn was there, and now there is now the time is for the next life to begin on. So ecological succession successive period, successive successive steps. So these are called as seral communities. The first community that occupies the bare land is known as pioneer community, and the last is known as the climax community. So climax community is almost same in both the succession, primary, secondary, and forest ecosystem. That is the forest. So there are different type of forest I have told about: tropical rainforest, deciduous forest, scrub forest, rainforest, deciduous, and coniferous forest. Next is desert ecosystem. As I told you, that desert has almost sand only, and there very less vegetation is found on. But still, we can see a a variety of the food and the animals present over there, and they have their own adaptations. And these are adaptations due to the presence of such kind of ecology or ecosystem over there. So I have there are two type of desert: hot and cold desert that already are aware of. So hot desert, the temperature is very warm and the summers are very hot. Where in cold deserts, there is short warm summers and long cold winters. Next is grassland ecosystem. As it is very similar to the forest ecosystem, only there the plains are found on and less of the trees are found on. So there are temperate grasslands, tropical grasslands, and polar grasslands. Next is aquatic ecosystem. It is very important because much of the human community depends upon the aquatic ecosystem. So it is important for us to read about it. first I will tell you about the freshwater ecosystem. There is pond ecosystem, lake and river. The pond ecosystem has very less, or you could say marshy plants are present over there, and very small fishes are found over there. We keep this pond ecosystem in order to have a fish, to cultivate fishes, so that we can consume them, and we can because they are our livestock also. And lake ecosystem, it's not of that much of importance to the human for the food, but yeah, it has a aesthetic value. Whereas the river ecosystem has very much importance, because river is a flowing water and everybody requires fresh water for their drinking, and stones and whatever which is found from the river. Marine ecosystem covers approximately 71% of the earth, whereas the 97% of the planet. And marine ecosystem has large fishes such as sharks and all. They all are ecologically important, as well as they have aesthetic value too. We acquire squalene for our body lotions, that is obtained from the sharks. So yeah, we use every product of the marine ecosystem in our day-to-day life, so it is also very important for us. Now, factors affecting ecosystem and environmental health. So first is population explosion, because every ecosystem has its carrying capacity, and if that carrying capacity is turned off, or we could say that if we have crossed that carrying capacity, there will be population explosion. Resources would be limited, competition would be more, and this would result into massive extinction. Next is industrialization. Due to industrialization, many of the moths, as we all know, industrial melanization was an example in evolution, that the black peppered moths got more over the stabilization than the white peppered moths. This is all because of industrialization. Industrialization is giving selective adaptations to some and others to not, and this is causing a mass extinction also. And also because of this, our global warming is getting more. The ozone layer is depleting, so industrialization is also not good, because it is also leading to habitat fragmentation. Next is urbanization. Urbanization is directly proportional to habitat fragmentation, because of which many of the organisms have become habitatless, and there is no such forest, and the forest land has decreased from 37% to 23%. Next is automobiles. Automobiles consume carbon, as we all know, and if there will be excess of the carbon, of course this will lead to global warming, which will further result into less photosynthesis, as humidity will increase, and if humidity will increase, the rate of photosynthesis will decrease. Next is modern agriculture practices. Modern agriculture practices tells about, again, we are increasing our food land, but the process over here is very wrong, because we are consuming the fuel which is not renewable. So again, it is consuming our non-renewable resources, which will be a duplicate, or you could say detrimental effect on our ecosystem afterwards. Next is deforestation. We all know that deforestation leads to desertification over a time, and if deforestation is continued, once there will be a time when the whole land would be desertified, and this will of course lead to the extinction of even the human evolution and even the other organisms. Next is transformation of energy. As I previously told, that the transformation of energy is through the Lindeman's law, that is 10% law of energy. It is transferred in the 10%, only 10% of the energy is transferred to the successive trophic level, and the 90% is consumed in biological processes or in the heat formation. This is a pictorial representation of how photosynthesis, how carbon dioxide, and how plants are very important for our ecology or ecological system. And it is just a flow diagram of how the energy is consumed, or or why do we require energy in different ways. And that's all. Thank you.